Welcome to Random Movie Reviews. I'm Nathan, and today I'll be talking about Frankenstein. So this was one of my more anticipated movies of the year. I'm a pretty big Guillermo del Toro fan. In fact, the other day I was on my Letterboxd looking at his filmography, and I've seen most of his movies. The only films of his that I still haven't seen are Mimic, Pinocchio, and Pacific Rim, surprisingly enough. I never got around to that one, but it looks like fun, pulpy sci-fi action nonsense that I really love, so I'm going to remedy that one soon. But as far as the rest of his filmography goes, I've liked to love the majority of his movies. My two favorites being Pan's Labyrinth and Shape of Water. I really love The Shape of Water, and I know not a lot of people do. In fact, I've seen that movie routinely named as being like one of the worst Best Picture winners ever, which, you know, I personally don't really care about the Oscars, but all I can say is The Shape of Water really surprised me, emotionally speaking. I found that movie to be quite touching and just really lovely, and I'm due for a rewatch on that one soon, which I might actually talk about on this channel. The only film of Del Toro's that I've seen that just really didn't connect with me was Crimson Peak. I absolutely loved the look of the movie, the atmosphere, the gothic visual aesthetic. I mean, that's one of Guillermo del Toro's biggest strengths as a filmmaker, is his strong visual direction. It's pretty much always outstanding. But in the case of Crimson Peak, I just could not care less about the story that was being told, about the characters. I thought the performances were pretty, you know, whatever, just not that memorable. So I liked the look of the movie, but everything else just didn't really work. And man, it's really, really unfortunate that I can more or less say a lot of the same things about his version of Frankenstein. Overall, I do think Frankenstein is a better movie than Crimson Peak, and there are elements that I do like about this movie. I don't want to come off like that I hate this movie or I think it's terrible, but I really, really wanted to love this movie because I love Del Toro. I love him as an artist, and as a person, he just seems like the sweetest, most lovable, likable person ever. And there's nothing more disheartening than watching a movie that you know you really, really want to love, but you just can't. There are too many problems that get in the way of your enjoyment of it. So, with all that being said, let's get into it. As far as the story goes, I mean, this is pretty much a very straightforward retelling of Frankenstein. There's some noticeable differences here and there, some of which I don't think really work, which I'll get into. I have not read the book, which I know a lot of people have been critical of this movie because there's been some pretty major changes from the book in comparison to the way Del Toro's telling the story. Of course, I am familiar with the James Whale Frankenstein movies, and I think Bride of Frankenstein is a masterpiece. It's my favorite Universal monster movie. It's one of my favorite movies ever, and I think it's probably the most perfect gothic movie ever made. So I'm mainly coming at this movie from that angle, being roughly aware of the story being told in the book, and of course being aware of the classic movies. But yeah, it's the story of Frankenstein, and the movie in some aspects is very, very straightforward in terms of that retelling. Obviously, like with Crimson Peak, the visuals of this movie are incredible. There are some scenes in this movie that are some of Del Toro's best in terms of visual filmmaking that I was really, really struck by. So much so that I was like, why is this movie only going straight to Netflix? I know it had a very limited theatrical run, but this is the type of movie that would really be quite amazing to see on the big screen. Perhaps I would have enjoyed it more seeing it on a bigger screen, although I doubt it because, like I said, there are some issues in this movie that just, you know, really, really stuck out to me. But visually and the costumes and all of that stuff is really, really outstanding. So that's definitely not a problem that the movie has. It's by far the film's greatest strength. This is a very gorgeous looking movie. Although there were some CGI moments that really stood out kind of awkwardly in comparison to how practical and beautiful the rest of the movie looked, but I'll get into that a little later. But visually, thumbs way up. I mean, the movie looks awesome. Right off the bat, the problem number one I had with the movie was Oscar Isaac's performance. I'm a big Oscar Isaac fan. Inside Llewyn Davis, another movie that is an all-time favorite of mine. One of my favorite performances. I think he's brilliant in that movie. And in most movies where I see Oscar Isaac, he's always great. But for whatever reason, his performance really stuck out to me as being quite awkward. It felt too hammy in a lot of scenarios. It felt too theatrical in a way that none of the other performances were. It also felt kind of one note. And I think a big part of that goes into how the character of Victor is written in this movie. We do get a flashback of Victor's childhood about his relationship with his mother and his relationship with his abusive father, who he doesn't get along with. And then we fast forward to him being an adult, and there's not a lot of nuance or complexity to him as a character. He's pretty much just a mad scientist with a god complex who's a bit of a dick. And that's a really big problem, especially when we get to the climax of this movie, when we get to like the emotional, the big emotional climatic scene that we have with Victor and the monster. It feels so forced and unearned when Victor's calling him, you are my son and all this stuff, because there was no scene, literally no scene prior to that where we saw any moment of love or genuine care that Victor had for the monster. I realize that there do need to be scenes of Victor being a bit monstrous, being a bit crazy and erratic, especially towards the monster, to really hammer home the themes of the story. But it's so one note to the point where it's like, I don't give a shit about this guy. I'm actually kind of rooting for him to be killed by the monster. He's such a dick. He's so unlikable. And like I said, it's very one note. There's no nuance, no complexity, no moments where I see the human side to him. I just see him as being a bit of a dick. Then we get into the design of the monster, which, holy shit. I purposely avoided any images or stuff from this movie. Like, I saw the teaser trailer and that was it. I didn't see anything else in that trailer. They don't really show the monster, which I thought was good. So I was like, okay, I'm curious to see what the monster is going to look like. And I don't know whose idea it was. I have to assume Del Toro. Why would he want to go with sexy Frankenstein as the look of his monster? I mean, it was so... When I first saw the monster, I was like, really? This is the monster. This mildly patched up looking handsome Squidward. Like, are we serious? This looks like the type of monster that would hang out with Edward in Twilight. This looks like if Twilight did a Frankenstein monster, that's what this monster would look like. You know, he's got a perfect build. He's got kind of this beautiful looking marble type of skin, which doesn't make sense when you know, when the movie shows all of the scenes of Victor getting decomposing body parts and putting it together and all that stuff. Like, how that makes him look like that was very distracting, and I couldn't really get over that. The fact that the monster has X-Men like healing powers was another change that I thought didn't really make a lot of sense, like logistically, within the context of the movie. I realize this is meant to be a fantastical film and there are certain elements that you have to suspend your disbelief, but the movie makes no attempt as to why the creature is basically superhuman and can actually heal after being blown up and shot at and all this stuff. Of course, that goes into one of the bigger changes between this movie and the original Frankenstein movie, is that in the original, he's immortal, but he can still die. Which goes into the tragic ending of Bride of Frankenstein, which Del Toro tries to subvert in this movie in a way that does not work. But I will say Jacob Elordi's performance, like physical performance in the way he conveys the monster and the way he speaks as a monster, is really quite good. So I have no problem with his performance. I think he does a good job. I just hate the look of the monster. I know they try to make him look a little bit dirtier once he has long hair, but once again, he just looks like kind of cool, grungy, sexy Frankenstein, and I hated that direction. I will say that my favorite part of the movie is the part where we see Frankenstein's monster's point of view. This movie's told in chapters, and we eventually get to his chapter, which is kind of a retelling of that one scene in Bride of Frankenstein where he comes across this blind old man who is not judging Frankenstein because he can't see him and is being very warm and nice and compassionate to him. So we get kind of a Del Toro's version of that, which the way he kind of retells that story is the best part of the movie. It made me wish that the movie was mostly from the monster's point of view. I really liked that aspect of it. And that's the best part of the movie. It was the most emotional and like heart-wrenching scenes. Him with the old man. And then of course it ends tragically. So yeah, that whole portion of the movie was by far my favorite aspect of the film. And then we get to the climax of the movie, which the way the movie's being told, it's being told kind of, out of order. It's one of those movies where it kind of starts at the end and then we're told via flashbacks through first-person narratives how we ended up in this place, where Frankenstein is on this ship, where this ship has been, kind of caught in icebergs, and they have to deal with the monster trying to get to Victor. And then there's meant to be like this touching scene between Victor and the monster, which because Victor has been such a dick and there is no moment of compassion or him loving the monster at any point. He's always pissed off that the monster keeps saying Victor and he doesn't know how to say anything else, which goes into another scene in the movie where he meets up with Victor, like he tracks him down when Victor's at Elizabeth's wedding, and he's speaking coherently, and he was able to track him down, and he's much more intelligent now. And this is the first time that Victor has seen Frankenstein being able to put like whole words and sentences together. And there's no reaction whatsoever. It isn't like, oh my God, you can actually talk now and you were able to find me. And it's like, oh my, you have the capacity to be intelligent like I am. Like, that's the big reason why Victor really ends up hating the monster, is that it's a simpleton and he doesn't have the patience for it. And that's why he ends up trying to kill the monster and burn alive the estate that he was at when he made the monster. So there's a scene where they meet up prior to the end of this movie. And I was so flabbergasted. I'm like, really? He has no reaction to seeing the monster? It's like, that could have been the one scene where we actually see Victor show some compassion to his creation that we didn't see throughout any of the rest of the movie. That could have been the one scene where you could have hammered that home that would have made the ending more emotionally impactful. But even that was butchered and handled extremely poorly. And then we get to the end of the movie where we get this really melodramatic and completely insincere moment of sentimentality between Victor and his creation, where he's like, you are my son. And it comes off as so bullshit because there is no indication that Victor felt anything but just pure hatred towards his creation for not being what he wanted it to be. And then the movie ends with the monster accepting the fact that he can never die, but that he's free to do what he wants to do. So he helps the ship, sets it free. I think Victor passes away on the ship while the ship crew is able to leave. And then he puts his arms out, outstretched to the sun, letting it warm his face, which is a scene that we saw earlier, kind of indicating the moment that he had with his old man companion. And then the movie ends with him being happy or something, which makes absolutely no sense because he can't even die. So he's destined to roam the earth for all eternity. But the movie tries to force a hopeful spin on that. Just didn't work or connect with me whatsoever. So, yeah, man, the more that I talk about the movie, the more irritated I am because it just feels like such a missed opportunity. As far as the other performances go, I mean, we get Christoph Waltz, which, he's good. He's good in every movie. We get Mia Goth as Elizabeth, who I felt was underutilized. There's a moment where, once again, a forced and unearned moment of romance between Elizabeth and the Frankenstein monster that kind of comes out of nowhere. They had a scene earlier when he was first being created where she was showing compassion to the monster in a way that Victor wasn't, and that makes the monster remember the name Elizabeth. But I guess when they get reunited, Elizabeth decides, oh, I'm in love with you now, which is like, what? Where did that come from? Like, you can have sympathy for the monster, you can have compassion for the monster, but that whole forced love thing, it came out of nowhere, and it was so rushed and unearned that once again it just kind of left me rolling my eyes. It's nowhere near as emotionally affecting as I wanted it to be. I felt more annoyed and just kind of bummed out that this movie just did not connect with me on any sort of emotional level, with the exception of that one scene where Frankenstein is with his old man companion. I mean, that was the part of the movie that really worked for me. And there's some fun kind of campy action stuff that I was enjoying as well. But outside of that, yeah, this movie just honestly felt like such a huge missed opportunity. And that's kind of my view on it. I seem to be in the minority. This movie seems to be getting mostly positive reviews from both critics and audiences. Perhaps if I revisit this movie down the road, I may feel differently. But yeah, as of right now, this is definitely one of the more disappointing movies I've watched this year. But I would love to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on this movie? If you've seen it, do you like it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? And what is your favorite Del Toro movie? Mention it in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching.